Hello and welcome to another Comics Burst from the Full Force podcast, sponsored by Distant Planet Comics and Collectibles, where we take an in-depth look at the newest G.I. Joe comics and related titles of the week, with me as your host, Chris Skynet McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80. Joining me for his second Full Force appearance is Anthony Bracali from TFU.Info and the Transformers University podcast. On this instalment of your absolutely favourite kind of burst, we look at the second issue in this new series connected to the Transformers universe, Transformers vs. the Terminator. So without further ado, come with me if you want to live. The T-800, last hope of his kind, has travelled back to 1984 to destroy the Cybertronians before they can awaken and subjugate his future. But when the Ark systems start to bring the Autobots and Decepticons back online, what will he do against two armies? It's up to one Terminator to save the future, and nothing's gonna stand in his way. Ant, great to have you back on, mate. How are you doing, sir?
Doing great. Happy to be back.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you on. I had an absolute blast, or burst. I had an absolute burst doing this last time. So, let's get stuck into this second issue. So, Enemy of My Enemy Part 2. Same team as last time. Story by David Marriott, Tom Waltz, and John Barber. Again, they must have just been just all in a room together, enjoying themselves. David Marriott and John Barber on writing duties. Artist Alex Milne and colorist David Garcia Cruz, and letters and design Jake M. Wood. Now, what we always do here is we go into the covers first. Thankfully, we don't have as many as issue 1, and certainly not as many, as you mentioned earlier off screen, Snake Eye's Dead Game. Just the 3 for this one. How crazy are these covers at the moment?
For Terminator, not so much. I mean, at least, 3 is certainly manageable. The 36 for Snake Eyes is out of control.
I feel so bad for completists on that, because that's going to be tough to do, because a lot of them are so exclusive and all pre-ordered and all, really expensive as well.
Well, what the company's figured out is that they feel like, these Joe fans haven't had anything to buy for 3 years. We're going to make them spend 3 years in 1 year.
And they're going to have a lot of framing money as well to have to put these up. But yeah, crazy. So, Transformers versus the Terminator issue 2, like you said, only has 3. The first cover, A, art and colours by Gavin Fullerton. Very, again, similar to that first one. We mentioned there was going to be like a series we expected from Gavin of these kind of covers. What do you think of this one?
I like this one a lot. It's not my favorite, but I like the using the Terminator showing up from the time tunnel or whatever that's called, and the naked body kind of crouched down. It's very classic Terminator. You almost don't even need Optimus Prime in here.
Yeah.
Part of me was like, I don't know why. I mean, you need him to kind of sell the cover, but you can almost do this like inside the Matrix or inside of something else, a little more Transformers-y that would have worked.
Yes, that's actually a really good point. Because obviously the circle lends itself, doesn't it, to the Matrix of leadership. Oh, that's a great idea. You could have even had the hands pulling it apart with the Terminator in the middle. Oh, that would have been sweet. Anyway, that's for the next cover. Yeah, I'm the same. I like that. I like that style, that black and red, almost kind of like very textured as well. There's a lot of textures going on that too. I'm really a big fan of it. So cover B is art by KCW Collar, colours by David Garcia Cruz. And again, this is another one where they've mixed up, much like they did on the previous bunch of covers, that mix up of the Terminator with the Transformers. And obviously, again, using them, not the skulls, but the Transformers' heads, I think is quite inspired here.
Yeah, it is. And it's a neat choice of characters, too, down there. Like, just looking at it now, I just noticed in the bottom corner of that image there is Alita 1's head.
Nice.
The pink with the spike, and there's actually one hiding behind her. I can't even make that one out, but hey, robot teeth, always cool with me.
Yeah, totally. That is all. I'm going to zoom in on that. It almost looks. It almost has a Soundwave vibe to it if Soundwave wasn't right next to him. But that's interesting. I wonder who that is. Anyway. I don't know. There's a couple in there that I'm really. There's a lot of teeth actually involved there, isn't there? And Ratchet, you can see his teeth as well. That's amazing. And Megatron. And you got Wheeljack and Bumblebee. Yeah, really like that. And obviously the fact that it's in front of the Ark as well, that's really cool too. Wedged into the into Mount. I've already forgotten the Mount. Mount St. Helens?
Mount St. Hillary.
Hillary, that's it. Mount St. Helens. what was that about? Another solid cover, and also kind of, you've got the aspect that the cover here is actually showing you something not 100%. It's more metaphorical, but you do see the Terminator losing a lot of his skin in this issue. So it's kind of, it kind of relates to what's going on in the issue, which can sometimes be a bit of a bugbear to me, where you have an issue that has like a cover that has nothing to do with what's going on inside. What about the retailer incentive, which is art by Freddie E. Williams II, colours by Jeremy Colwell? What do you think of this one?
That one I find, the colors I like. I like the watercolor kind of vibe to it. But I'm with you on the, I like having the cover relate more to the story if possible. And this one just doesn't do it for me. I mean, it's a retail incentive, so it's not one you're going to find that often.
Yeah.
But I mean, the image itself is beautiful. It's the colors really make this one pop.
Absolutely, the kind of glow around, not just the Terminators, but also Optimus Prime. And it seems like that is taken from a situation that just hasn't happened yet. Or, Terminator's coming through some sort of time portal or something. Or, there's interesting things going on. But, like you say, that's not happening in the issue, so it's odd. But anyway, really, really cool set of covers there. Let's get into the actual issue itself. This is Enemy of My Enemy Part 2, and we begin just as we left off with the Terminator and Sarah Connor infiltrating the Ark, only to find Megatron and the Decepticons on the verge of destroying a lifeless Prime and his Autobots. And then we get the Terminator attacking Megatron, getting his attention. And then we have a really cool panel that I wanted to kind of point out here was really interesting, where we see him looking at Starscream, Soundwave, and Megatron through his eyes. And we get that kind of really cool thing where he's got the designations written, as he would see in his infrared kind of vision next to each character. And what I thought was interesting about this was the use of those designations, and if I could find any homages in there. There's one very clear one, which I think you'd agree with me on this. The Megatron one is very clear. The P-38 Man from U.N.C.L.E. issued weapon that he turns into originally in G1, the P-38 Walther. Now that obviously is in that particular model, P-38 UNC, which I thought was really cool. In terms of like Soundwave and Starscream, any ideas for those?
Actually, I went ahead to TF Wiki, which
brilliant.
is a great resource for this stuff, and looked these up. So the Starscream one,
micro cassette, I'm going to say, probably wrong.
I'm sorry. What was your idea?
Did you say Soundwave?
No, for Starscream.
Starscream. Sorry, carry on. Yeah.
So the 22 and the 15 are he turns into an F-15
or an F-22, yeah,
or an F-22, yeah. So those are the designations there, and then you're right with Soundwave microcassette. So that is his Microman designation for the cassette man figure.
Brilliant. Yeah, okay, because I did think initially of the Raptor and of the F-15 because of those numbers, but then I thought, yeah, but you'd be more likely he'd be like an F-14, and the DC threw me off as well. So I was thinking, I wonder what that means. But that's great if that is the case. If it's the F-22 Raptor and the F-15, that's brilliant. So yeah, I love those little aspects.
Might be Decepticon.
Oh, of course. I really am not with it today, am I? That's genius. And I love those little aspects that they throw in, don't you?
Oh, love it. Absolutely love it. And, one more thing to note on the page before, talking about Alex Milne's art, the reaction of Megatron after he gets shot and before he breaks out laughing is just one of these perfect moments that you get when you have Alex Milne penciling your work. Is like, there's so much expression there, which is just you don't even need the words.
So true.
How great that is.
It's so true. Like, you don't. And again, like that middle panel does it for me, where he assesses the damage on his gun. I love that. It's like he's just been shot, and then he kind of like looks at it to see if it's done anything, and he's like, "What the hell are you?" Which is just brilliant.
And it's a very Terminator thing to do. On the other, like you've seen the Terminator do that to humans in movies a lot. Not necessarily laugh, but just kind of take a beating and kind of just look and then walk and then move away. And,
exactly, yeah.
Having it done on the flip side to him is also just it makes that moment just a little bit more fun.
It's so true. And I love the fact he's also isolating areas of weakness. And it's funny that they've got the neck joint for Starscream, which, I mean, if you think of the MP mold, there's probably a lot of weaknesses you could pick up on. for like, you know, like that little, before they fixed it, do you remember the connection on that Seeker mold where it wouldn't quite, the waist wouldn't quite click into place?
Yep.
I mean, that would have been perfect for me if they'd have said waist connector or something like that. That'd have been a really nice touch.
Yeah, you think of the G1 mold of Starscream, that head that flips around with the nose cone on the back. The nose cone always weighs it and brings that lower half up, so the neck joint is kind of the weak point on that figure.
That is, again, a really nice touch if, you know, if they're going into that depth. The knee joint for Soundwave is quite funny as well. And you could have just gone. You could have picked anything for a masterpiece weakness for that first Megatron figure. Anyway, Masterpiece bashing aside, I do love Masterpiece. We get beyond that. The Terminator takes out one of Meg's optics. So he does that after designating that his eye is his weakness. Takes that out. The three Decepticons that basically they start this fight with the T-800, and Sarah Connor tries to escape, but Soundwave releases Ravage to try and actually, you know, get rid of her. And the skirmish continues, and as it does, Teletran 1 revives Prime, and you know, and he steps in then to battle the cons. So, I mean, were there any kind of elements in this kind of phase of play that kind of that caught your eye?
Yeah, there were a whole bunch. I mean, it's a really well done action sequence.
Big time.
Kind of just moving things along. You know, with Alex Milne, there's always some, you know, neat little background things, and there's some interesting continuity things that sit in here. In that, like during you know, one of Megatron's speeches here, he's, you know, there's Decepticons being repaired in the background, and those are Insecticons in the shot, which doesn't really line up with either the original cartoon or the original comic continuity.
Yeah,
because Insecticons aren't on the ship on either one.
Yeah,
so there's that, and then I noticed something, and it's something I covered in a recent episode of my show, is that Trailbreaker in this scene, you know, the Terminator gets thrown up against Trailbreaker in one of these panels, and then Skywarp shoots Trailbreaker's body and blows up his head.
Yeah.
And I feel like I just realized this, like Trailbreaker is in the comics has kind of been a punching bag. It's kind of been the guy who gets blown up.
Big time. Yeah, I feel there's a few characters that kind of get a bit of a raw deal in the Transformers universe. And yeah, Trailbreaker is definitely one of those. Absolutely. Yeah, and again, like it's funny. This was one of the parts where I had to kind of do a couple double takes because the color, as good as the coloring is, and it is beautiful, I had to double check whether Skywarp and Thundercracker were actually in the game in play. And I went back to the other panel where you see them, like, you know, fixing up the Insecticons. Okay, there's Skywarp and Thundercracker. That makes more sense because it goes from Starscream and Soundwave talking, then you turn the page and it's, even though it's coloured, it's obviously Skywarp when you mention it now. I was just assuming it was the flash of the explosion that had been caused that had given the colour to Starscream almost.
Right.
And so it was a little bit confusing. But obviously, yeah, once I'd read it a few times, I was like, oh, okay, clearly enough. And then obviously, even when you get shot in that panel underneath that, it's not 100% clear because of the flash of the laser and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's obviously Skywarp. But yeah, really, really enjoyed this entire action sequence in actual fact. And I love the fact that Sarah Connor is having this kind of like separate battle where she's trying to escape Ravage, and she climbs up onto Teletran 1 and she's kind of diving out the way of him. And just when you think she's going to get taken by Ravage and, you know, destroyed, killed, Ravage actually changes his mind and attacks Prime because obviously he's in the battle now and he's turning the tide a little bit. And again, this sequence, you know, it's like there's obviously a little bit of a leap of faith for me here where Sarah Connor is listening to the conversation. She hears them talking about Decepticons and Autobots. She then in that moment notices the logos on Prime. The logos differ with the Decepticons, and she makes the decision, albeit on the fly, to see that Bumblebee's got that same logo. Let's push the Teletran 1 scanner over and fix him. There's a bit of a leap of faith there to me. But I mean, what did you think of that?
Oh, I liked it. I feel like it's a callback to some extent to that one Dinobot episode in the original show when they're like, ones who look like this, ones with this, you know, and they point to the thing, to the symbol on their chest. And so for me, that was kind of like a nostalgia trigger for me. So I was like, okay, that works for me as far as a story device. a couple of things going back to the fight with Ravage. She calls him a dog, which which is one of the great like misconceptions of Ravage a lot of the time. So I thought that was nice little touch there in the writing.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that kind of irked me about the fight scene overall. And it's something I'm starting to really appreciate as I'm going back through old comics. Is that there? And it's funny. It got buried in my copy of the comic because there's a watermark from IDW on the review copy. The sound effect on the scanner being pushed over, like I didn't even see it. I'm like, the importance of some of those things. Like there was a lack of sound effects in this really big battle.
That's true, actually. Yeah.
Use that a little bit more just to kind of build the vibe. That was the one knock on that whole sequence that I had.
There's definite space for those sound effects to go too when you look at it. So you wonder if like maybe there's tons of space when you look at it in the panels, and like you say, when she's pushing the scanner, there's all that space to the right of her where you could have like creak or whir or something as it's kind of going over there.
Or even something for the beam.
Yeah, like 100% agree with you on that. Hadn't really noticed it, but yeah, like I almost, thinking about it, didn't really have a massive soundtrack going on in my head as I was reading it, which is something that usually happens when I read it. I hear the voices definitely when I read it, but then when they transform and you got the chick chat chuck kind of thing, I always like hear that sound. You're right. There's definitely a thing there where that wasn't in my head as well. That's kind of odd to think about that in the past, but yeah. Really interesting. Now, Meg's eye is also like damaged quite badly here. It's like dripping all sorts. And then obviously we'll get to that point later on in the comic. We'll come back to that point that I've just mentioned in actual fact. So stick around, viewers. Obviously, once she's pushed that scanner and Bumblebee's come back to life, he then obviously aids in the battle. And that, even though it's Prime and Bumblebee and you've still got, they're still outnumbered technically, the Decepticons decide to beat a hasty retreat, and Megatron blows a whole huge hole in the side of the Ark. They all get out of Dodge, and we're left here with Prime and Bumblebee kind of assessing the damage. And in that panel you can see a few characters, I think Prowl's there, Wheeljack's kind of over there, half of him. Any others in there that you can see, Ant?
Oh yeah, there's Huffer in the middle. The one that really jumped out to me is on the left. It's RC.
Oh yeah, I see.
So she's hiding out in there, and you have Prowl. There's some conjecture as to whether or not the gray ones are dead.
Yeah.
But I think RC is really the one that jumps out to me in there, because you don't expect her to be part of the arc, and if she's part of the story, it's going to be an interesting twist on it.
Totally. And do you what's your thoughts on Decepticons running away at this point, even though it's only 2 against quite a few at this stage?
You know what? I'm fine with it. I think for the story, it's not just against 2. They're also fighting off the Terminator.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
And chasing a wild Sarah Connor around the arc, and they're not at full strength, right? True. So they've just been repaired. They need time to kind of gather their strength. They were repairing the Insecticons when this all kind of started, so they need time too. And I think that's fine as far as a story element of them retreating goes. I also like the Megatron eye damage situation. It's a very Terminator thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Like Terminator 1, that scene always freaked me out as a kid.
When he pops his own eyeball out, right? When he pops out into the sink. Yeah. Oh my God. Honestly, yeah, that was one of those scenes where you just like, oh. And it was kind of in that era of films as well, where you had, there would be always like one scene in there where you'd make you wince, and it was things like, I don't know if you remember in like Rambo 2 where he fixes, or was it I think it was 2 or 3, where he burns he has to cauterize the wound, the gunshot wound. Oh my God. And then in like movies like Highlander and things like that kind of era of movies where there's like always some sort of like gory element in there that kind of makes you wince. And you're right. Yeah. That one is an absolute classic when he pops the eye out, and he's
Large Marge scene.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Okay, so and obviously as we continue now, the Terminator still he doesn't differentiate between Autobots and Decepticons. His mission is to rid the world of Cybertronians, so he's still attacking Prime and Bumblebee. They go at it. What were your thoughts in how the Terminator was like stopped or calmed down in this scene with Sarah's kind of speech.
It was very Terminator 2 for me. It reminded me a little bit more of young John Connor, being the guy that trying to teach the T-800 how to be human.
Yeah.
So it didn't seem out of place. It was just long enough to kind of stop everything. And I think the Terminator at some point in this conversation realizes the timeline has now changed.
Yeah.
Because he not only did he not terminate the Autobots, but I guess somewhere in this timeline, the Decepticons eliminated the Autobots ahead of what happened.
Yeah.
And so this didn't shake out the way it just did. So
I suppose there's also an element of him not comfortably winning this fight as well. Like that he's kind of having to assess the situation. He's not necessarily going to win the battle with these two at that moment. So maybe you're right. There's probably a lot of things that he's kind of calculating and and I can see that too as well. I just like to get your thought process on these things that happen in the issue. And also it's nice to see again, and this is funny as well, like Optimus Prime. Well, actually, before we get to that, there's a flashback, isn't there, where we see the story and this kind of helps to fill the backstory of this particular continuity in. And there's quite some, vivid, dark scenes going on in this flashback, aren't there?
Yeah, it's funny because this was probably drawn months ago, but they took the faces off of Mount Rushmore, which couldn't be more topical than right now.
Totally.
And then the neat, interesting thing to me is the idea that they mentioned Skywatch.
Yes.
Which is from the IDW Transformers books, which eventually leads to like the EDC. So it's a nice reference there.
Absolutely.
You have another reference to Atlantis Arise, where Megatron takes over the Lincoln Memorial, and here is Megatron on the Lincoln Memorial as his throne. It's also done in one of the Michael Bay films as well. So it's kind of a running gag in Transformers at this point.
And G.I. Joe as well. We've had plenty of kind of, the Worlds Without End cartoon had Mount Rushmore changed to the Cobra,
right?
The Cobra guys and everything, and there was the Lincoln Memorial was changed. Yeah, so they love those kind of real visual kind of metaphors, don't they, in these kind of stories. But also, I'm loving the fact that this comic is tying in some really nice homages to different Transformers media. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm really enjoying. Like, this has become like almost, it's not, I wouldn't even say it's like a guilty pleasure, but it's a really nice surprise for me. How have you found it so far?
Yeah, I would say, I think last time we ended our conversation with this was the crossover I didn't really know I wanted until we had it. And it's still staying that way, especially with this kind of second issue where it's kind of a boilerplate crossover, right?
Yeah.
You have your good guys meet the other good guys, but don't get along with them, and then have to figure out a reason to work together. Right?
Yeah.
That's kind of your standard, crossover. And to do that and keep it interesting, they're peppering in these references and these kind of stylistic consistencies with both properties. And I think that's really what's pushing it forward for me.
Totally. And again, like it's not there's nothing groundbreaking here. There's nothing like super original. But I think it's just, so far, it's been a very satisfying series for me. Like, I've enjoyed it. The pace as well is really, it's not like too fast that you've read it and it's like, well, there was wasn't much in that. They're squeezing a lot of information in here. And obviously we get, like I said, we get the flashback. We get the explanation of how Skynet came to be. It was like a project within Skywatch. And obviously when all the humans were obliterated, it left Skynet to kind of like basically try and survive itself by by kind of succumbing to the Decepticons. And by doing that in secret, they build this time machine, and lo and behold, we're back here. And this is the point I was going to make before, where we have Prime giving his speech to kind of almost explain to the Terminator that the Autobots have nothing to do with it, but his basically moral standing here. And I love the fact that Sarah Connor's like, you have to admit that was pretty inspirational.
He was speechifying, as we call it.
Yes, exactly. And I just, again, that's something that we see Prime do in every iteration of Transformers, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And on that same page, going back to just characters in the background, there is a dead Mirage in the corner of one of those panels.
Oh yeah, good spot.
But yeah, I love that you get your your Optimus speech, because you need to have that somewhere in here, right? And Sarah kind of reacting to that, just it doesn't make it seem so hokey if she kind of pays it off by saying it was kind of hokey, but it's still pretty great.
Yeah, exactly. And here we see the transformation of Prime, and it's quite funny. I find, is she like kind of going, like, feeling a little sick that he just transformed and she's going to like sit inside him or something? Is that what she's reacting to? Do you know what I mean? When he transforms,
I'm not entirely sure. It could be that, or it could be that she doesn't want to be physically inside of the robot.
Or maybe it's just quite overwhelming that he just transformed in front of her or something. Possibly, like kind of like she's not fainting, but because she's seen a lot at this point and she hasn't. So it's just funny that she kind of reacts that way. But yeah. And we see the sound effect, which is nice, that I always hear when I see it written down.
Yeah.
Now we actually get now, and again, there's been a lot in a short period of time in this issue that's happened, but we've only been in 2 locations and a flashback, which doesn't sound a lot, but we get now the Decepticons gathering intel and kind of reporting to Megatron. Starscream concludes that the Terminator they battled is the only real threat, and the majority of the humans are just squidgy flesh sacks, which I made that term up. But yeah, it's really harsh that he just shoots that dune buggy full of humans, and you can see it kind of obliterate in the background as he's kind of saying, yeah, they're all a bit weak.
Yeah. And it's weird just because, like, I mean, they get blown up as they're just so not important.
I know, it's so mean, isn't it, as well? It's just like, oh, it's just they're dead now. And then obviously we get Bombshell and Refractor turning up, and here's where Megatron learns of basically a place where they can get Energon or an equivalent. And but also something I will mention here is that his eye is fixed now. Is it the case? Because they even said that he's the one that damaged your eye, etc., etc. But it seems to be kind of fixed now. Do you think that's an error, or do you think they've just repaired it?
I would guess they just repaired it. I didn't notice it until we were starting to talk really about his eye. I don't know. I don't know. The thing I noticed here on that page, aside from Megatron's eye, is the Bombshell's insect mode is a different model than it normally is. It's still a beetle, but he's got these really tricked out wings.
Yeah. Maybe it's like to make it more believable that he's flying.
Yep.
Yeah, because I mean, it's always weird to see, like, the Dinobots or like them kind of flying sometimes. But yeah, I'm wondering if that is like a stylistic addition for this.
Oh wait, hold on. They're repairing Megatron's eye when this starts.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, because look at the second panel. You have Soundwave in silhouette.
Oh, yes, you're correct. Thank you. That is a great spot again, and that sorts everything out. Perfect. So we can take all of that back. It's all staying in, but it's all taken back because Ant has got a really good eye, unlike Megatron.
Again, it was also blocked out on my copy by the watermark.
Damn watermark. I should have picked up on that. I must admit, it did feel odd that he was sitting down while Soundwave was right next to him, just like... it makes a lot of sense now. It makes a lot more sense. But yeah, okay, so he's fixed. That's good, and that makes sense. Now, the facility we're talking about is Cyberdyne Systems, and the last panel is the Decepticons attacking the facility. And we have seen this image of the Decepticons attacking a facility in Sunbow alone multiple times. So it's a nice visual that we're all a recognizable visual, isn't it? Here,
yeah, it is. It's a nice bow to put on the end of this issue. There's no wind charger in a lab coat, but other than that, it's fantastic.
So again, like, we get to the end of this issue, it feels like a quick one, because I remember when we did the first issue, we were picking out, almost panel to panel, there were things that we were kind of noticing and picking up. Similar in this, but certainly not as much in that sense. But we do get, like I said, a lot of kind of movement from one place to the other, and I'm really happy with how this issue went. How about yourself?
Yeah, I am too. I think the art really makes the issue more so than the plot, because the plot is kind of still boilerplate crossover stuff.
Yes.
But I mean, it's an issue too. It's going to kind of build the world to some extent and move the story along just enough. It had at least a little bit of action. It had transforming Transformers, which is always good. And so, I mean, I definitely like it. I wouldn't say it was like the perfect issue, but it was certainly a fun issue.
Yeah, I agree. It's for me, like I said before, it's kind of like it's just ticking boxes for me at the moment, like satisfaction. You know, like I get to the end of the issue, I'm like, I'm really happy with this. Like, and it's not. I wouldn't say it's rare, but like in terms of like a lot of the, you know, when you read a lot of comics, sometimes you get to the point where you're just like, yeah, I'm not really feeling this for some whatever reason. And this one, I think, is just doing enough nostalgia-wise, but also, you know, it's still a believable crossover. It's not like sometimes in the crossovers, you know, the two kind of character options tend to like clash a little bit, and I feel like that hasn't really happened here.
No, not yet. I think we need a little more from the Terminator side of this. You know, this was a very Transformer heavy issue. Last issue was a really Terminator heavy issue. So
yeah.
They are kind of balanced out overall. You know, it's interesting going into a second issue. What I realized as we're talking here is like a first issue kind of ramps up to some sort of action and cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And the second issue then kind of picks that up and then kind of starts to push you towards the third issue. And so the second issue generally tends to be really front-loaded good and then leaves you in a place where you're like, okay, I want more, but this isn't necessarily as exciting as it was when I ended that first issue. So trying not to compare those two sometimes is tricky.
Yeah.
I think overall, though, it's certainly a good pace. There's certainly, as you said, like I feel like it's not a slog to read. There's a lot of text still, though.
Yeah.
Which is always good. You know, I hate when I feel like I've read a comic in like 5 minutes.
True.
Because all I did was look at art.
I think the balance here for me is on point with the art and the text, because I'm the same as you. Like I don't want to, you know, unless it's like a silent issue or something, like the Larry Hama classic kind of style where it's done on purpose. I'd still like if you rinse through it and you're kind of done and it's like, well, there wasn't really much to that. You know, you're kind of almost like probably the art is what you need to really kind of drag you through with that. I think the balance here with the art is just absolutely sensational. I think it's even better in this issue for what they're doing, I guess, than the first issue. And the first issue was really spot on as well. There was some like absolute like there were some moments in that first issue where I was really just like, oh, that's beautiful. Even when Sarah was looking through the window of the truck. You know, you had the reflection on the window and everything, and I thought that was superb art. But this is like, you know, you follow it really. It's beautiful to kind of follow. It's not confusing. I know we've picked out a few things where we didn't notice Megatron's eye had been fixed, but you know, we were given everything we needed. We just didn't notice it. But in general, it's just really beautiful to look at. And the balance of not having, it's just enough text for me, because at the same point, I don't want to take an hour to read a comic and just be like effectively reading a book each page. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, you know, the things we didn't notice kind of go back again to the lettering. Like a sound effect would have sold us on that. The word bubble placement on that Megatron panel would have kind of helped us kind of lead us towards that, you know, that repair of his eye. It's the only real detractor from this book is the which is weird because lettering is the thing you don't notice unless it's really good or slightly bad.
Really, totally. But yeah, having said that, we like to give our comics ratings, don't we? And last time we started the process with the Terminator skulls. We'll continue that. Out of 5, how many Terminator skulls do you want to give this one, Ant?
I will give this one a 4. So a solid 4.
I'm impressed because usually I'm the generous one in the comics rating system, and honestly, I would have given it a 4 too as well. A 4 because I think it just is. Yeah, I think it hits a nice balance for me.
Yeah, I feel like this one is a little above average. It's not a top level issue of a book, but it's certainly not just middle of the road 3. So I feel like 4 is a good place for it to sit.
I absolutely agree, and that's through another issue of Transformers Terminator. Thanks again. But before we go, there's obviously a couple of things I'd like to talk about. One is obviously we get like a next issue image of like I'm guessing a cover as well. We've got Sarah Connor and the Terminator fully skinned up at this point. So maybe Teletran fixes him up. What do you think in that sense? Because and unless it's one of those ones where the cover doesn't match what's happening inside, because we've also got Prime and Bumblebee on that visual too.
Yeah, I don't know, because the Bumblebee kind of matches the body model they're using for Bumblebee. But the Terminator doesn't, because it looks a lot more like Schwarzenegger than he has in this story.
In fact, totally, agreed.
So I'm not entirely sure if it's something related to the story or not. Could he have been repaired by Teletran 1? That'd be pretty neat.
Yeah, like if Teletran 1, or maybe even like holographically enhanced or something, so that it looks like he's got his skin back.
I'm a little more concerned as to why Bumblebee is on top of Optimus.
I know, drive yourself, you lazy git. Absolutely. Or maybe it's one of those things where they're about to crash through the front gate or something, and he's going to leap off Prime in some sort of really heroic way. But I agree. Get on the road yourself, you lazy bastard. In any case, Bub, I really enjoy these little kind of like comics bursts we do, and will you be joining me again for the third issue, I hope?
If you'll have me, I'll be happy to come back.
Absolutely. Again, thanks, Ant, for jumping on, mate. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate being on.
Where can the good folks find you as well, if they want to check out more TFU stuff?
Sure. So you can find me on my podcast, Transformers University. It's basically everywhere you can get this show, on iTunes, Spotify, Google, and basically every other major podcasting service. I also run TFU.Info, which is the world's longest running Transforming Toy archive. And if you want to just reach out to me, I'm usually on Twitter at TFU_info.
And definitely, I must admit, worth a listen for the podcast. I've been really kind of like getting into some of the stuff you've been doing recently, especially since we kind of collaborated way back with not just the G.I. Joe crossover, but before that with the movie. I started to kind of like, check your stuff out when I've got the time as well. There's a few people that I'll listen to, because obviously my job is so editing heavy. My actual full-time job is all about video editing and audio editing, so it's difficult for me to listen to it. But yours and there's a couple of other guys I listen to as well in like the G.I. Joe and Transformers communities. Really enjoy your shows. They're always super informative. I love your kind of the viewpoint you have on the whole Transformers stuff. So if you are if you haven't listened to Ant stuff, check him out. It's really, really cool. Really enjoy it. And follow him on Twitter, because it's like the Full Force. We get that news out when we can, but also there's a hint of like personality in there. There's a bit of joke, a bit of humor, or something along those lines. So again, worth a follow on Twitter as well, mate.
Thank you so much.
No problem. That's it for this installment of the Full Force Comics Burst. Thank you to my awesome co-host, Ant from TFU.Info and Transformers University. See you next time, and as always, I'll be back. We'll be back. Full force. Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always, you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter at The Full Force, liking the Facebook page, facebook.com/The Full Force, and if you would like to contact the show, you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback or questions. We have also started a Patreon page, so if you want to see your name up in lights on these videos or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/The Full Force Podcast, or click the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force. And a big shout out to our sponsors, Distant Planet Comics and Collectibles, located at 601 Business Loop 70 West Suite 263, located in the Parkade Center, Columbia, Missouri. You can visit their website at distantplanetcomics.com and on Facebook at facebook.com/Distant Planet Comics.